Okay, so let's talk about, of course, a few definitions. The first thing, though, is I want you to think back to something that could have happened depending on how old you are and how long that your memory goes back to being in nature. Think of a time that you have a pretty distinct memory of regarding to being outdoors. I want everyone just to take a second. Everybody have something? How many of your somethings go way back to when you were between memory age 2 and 10 years old? Look at that. What about 10 to through high school, college, something like that? Okay. And then older than that, the rest of you? Okay. Oh, interesting. And now you're in it deep in your PhD. I can't wait for you during share time. What about, is there anybody that just is having trouble thinking of a memory of being in nature? Anybody? I know that I'm singing to the choir, right? But once in a while, there's a person that says, you know, I never really got it. Therefore, that's why I'm reaching out to try out this program. But that's rare. But that's okay, too. So my memory is the marigold one. I grew up in the Midwest, and back then, it was literally white picket fences, green lawns, Ozzie and Harriet. There were a lot of the traditional father works, mom stays home, especially in the Midwest. People didn't tend to have fences in their backyard because where I lived, it was a little bit cold for a swimming pool. And yet the land wasn't all that much, not like in California, so everybody had big yards. So we had 6 or 8 backyards to play in. Anybody have that experience? And you knew your neighbors well. Our next door neighbor were the Stancliffs. And Mrs. Stancliff had marigolds behind her white picket fence. And I, to this day, can remember exactly which color, because they're a little variant, and the smell. Whenever I smell a marigold to this day, it takes me back to when I had to be 4, because we moved when I was 5. So that's my first memory. Anyone else, I allow about 3 or 4 minutes. What are some of your early memories of being in nature? Yes?
Redwoods, going to the redwoods, and driving the tree.
Yeah?
And the greatest thing was whenever we went to do something like that, we got to eat cereal, rocks, cold rocks. I don't know why that was so.
Yeah, how fun. In the car you got to eat? Oh, wow. We never got to eat that. Wow, that's exciting. Oh, how fun. That's from, yeah, that association. You had one, right? You had,
My fondest memory was actually collecting mushrooms, going mushroom hunting with my dad. He would collect morels and all the field mushrooms safely. We had a mushroom book, we studied it, and we dried them out in my grandmother's attic. There's this distinctive smell on that.
yeah, collecting mushrooms.
Bags, grocery bags full of mushrooms.
Wow. And you lived through it. You were collecting the morals.
They were safe.
How fun.
Where was that?
Actually, all the corporate buildings. They had all the lawn, and they would mow, and all the humus would be just a wonderful place for the field mushrooms to come out.
Excellent.
Oh, and then the puffballs in the Midwest.
The puffballs in the Midwest, yeah. Oh, gosh. Yes.
I grew up in the deep south, more in the woods, so I was barefoot in the woods, all trees, were very young poplar. And I was born, or I lived in the Natchez Trace, which is a very historical place. And we dig in the dirt for arrowheads from cowboy and Indian days.
Oh.
Found many a buffalo nipple, which I wish I had nowadays, but I don't. But I had a Tom Sawyer job, so I could go on.
Oh, how fun. And so probably from a young age you were out exploring.
When I learned to walk, I was outside there. I spent the whole childhood barefoot in the woods.
Wow.
Vegetables and mulch and creeks,
Yeah.
finding ravens or wild turtles.
Yeah.
It could just go on. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Favorite part of my life.
Don't you just all envision these experiences? So A couple more? Yes?
My neighbor's little kid had the most wonderful dichondra lawn.
Oh,
And I
dichondra.
loved it, and I would walk around barefoot, and I would lay down, and I would roll around in it. And I got in the most trouble. They would tell me, tell my parents, and they were very nice. And they'd tell me, Becky, stay out of the dichondra. And okay, but then I couldn't resist it.
Dichondra lawn. That's a great story. I can just smell it now. All right, one more? Yeah? Yes?
Yes, I was raised on a farm in the woods too, but we used to go every year in your street or Illinois, which is about 80 miles south of Chicago.
Uh-huh.
And the topography of the land is so dramatically different from the flat plains where I was raised. And I would go, I can remember going down into, they're like limestone caverns and then springs that would come out of it, and it would grow completely different plants than I'd ever seen before. And the smell of that humid.
Yes.
It was like living in the tropics in that area, and it was very unusual to me. I thought that was
Wow,
really interesting.
fantastic. Not that I'm meaning to be boy, girl, but boys? Anyone? Anyone want to share? No? Okay. All right, thank you. All right, so let's talk about the documented benefits of simply being in a garden setting. Not even with a green thumb, just being there. These are some kids from our study at Norton Space and Aeronautic Academy in San Bernardino from a few years ago. I tell everybody, these guys were in first grade. This was 10 years ago. I'm sure now that they wish their parents hadn't signed off on those pictures, but we have right to it, and I love that picture. He says, no, I grew this strawberry. This is mine. So this is, I'm going to use the term garden, meditation, Zen garden. Oh, are you going to share?
Since you brought that picture up,
There you go.
you said, things that my childhood.
Okay.
It's a very similar experience, if you will, for me when I was in sixth grade. First experience I got, as with other kids.
Yeah.
To grow things in a garden setting. So that to me was, remembering it, it was a good experience, learning how to garden at that young age, or at least being exposed to it at that.
Excellent. Was that during the school day, after school? It was during,
Right there as part of the school.
where did you go to
It
school?
was a private academy up in Calamasa.
Okay, excellent. So you guys had a garden, and did you have curriculum tied to it?
No, it was just, you go out there and they wanted to do this, here's a little spot.
Yeah.
The teachers were the ones that were really, the ones that were, wanting to show individuals it was part of the curriculum.
Excellent. Thank you. If anyone else just crops up with these memories, they blossom, let me know, scream out. So cognitive benefits, enhanced cognitive functioning. A lot of these, as we get older, we can all use more of. I'll attest to that. Improved concentration, stimulated memories. Again, the smell, the sense of smell stimulates memory more than any other sense in most of us. Improved goal achievement, improved attention capacity. These all have published results in referee journals, so it's not just hokey pokey made up fake news stuff. Psychological benefits, improved quality of life, improved sense of well-being and self-esteem, or sometimes you'll hear the term self-efficacy, feeling secure in your own skin and feeling what most people would say a sense of self-esteem. Reduce stress and anxiety, improve mood, improve personal satisfaction and sense of pride. A lot of mental and emotional health comes into the psychological profile, where improved sense of personal worth, improved moods for sustained times, which is why that I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'll tell you now that research that shows taking a walk outside is more beneficial in that way than walking indoors on some kind of a track, apparatus, especially if you can't look outdoors. So there's a lot of research on that. Increased feelings of calm and relaxation, increased sense of stability. Social benefits, a lot of these cross over with what I just talked about with the psychological benefits. The school gardens, there's a big portion of research on what they call group cohesiveness, and another part of it is just playing well together. It's so important, and it can calm hyper kids down to be out in the garden. And they tend to kind of communal, discuss things that are on their minds in a productive way. It's fascinating what being in nature will do. Physical benefits is probably where we go to first when we think about being in nature, or many of you may. I don't so much, I used to always think about this, just the walking and the physical exertion, but overall improved physical health and heart rate, stress. A lot of this relates directly back to our emotional and psychological state of mind too. So examples of pioneering research. One of the most pioneering events in the field of therapeutic horticulture ever to be recorded happened back in the 80s. And Dr. Bob Ulrich and his wife are researchers that were really interested in somehow defining what this is in the field of biophilia, why we need living things in our lives so much. He wanted to kind of define what it is that makes that so important. And being a researcher, then he thought, you know, I'm going to go in and get some of the chronic patients' records from gallbladder surgery that were either in a wing of a hospital with a view of nature or the opposite wing of a hospital with the view of a brick wall. So these were records that were coded out so names and privacy was not impinged. And he simply looked at, number one, how long these patients were in the hospital. Number two, what they would rate and their family would rate as their psychological as well as physical health once they got home. And number three, how many medications and what rates they took. And so you know where I'm going with this, but all three of those showed that those that had the view of nature performed statistically significantly better as far as emotional and physical health. And this data couldn't be fudged because it was already taken, and he just came back to look at it from a different perspective. Yeah.
I wonder if that's kind of a springboard for the fact that people grade people in the hospital flowers and plants.
Interesting.
You know, it makes sense.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'd rather look at a beautiful plant than a balloon.
That's an interesting point that, yeah, that goes back, that traces back to memories we have of going to visit grandparents or going with a parent or a friend to visit somebody and maybe going in the flower or some kind of a gift shop and getting flowers right there in the hospital. Yeah, sure. Interesting thought. So this was very cutting edge, and a lot of people just didn't believe it. And so the body of research tripled within the next 5 years. And then it quadrupled, and now there's over 100 really well done papers that underscore these principles. So this is a fun one. Just playing in the soil can increase the serotonin in your body. And there's a real common bacteria, a mycobacterium, that's in a lot of our soils. So how cool is that, right? And again, as a biologist, doesn't that make all the sense in the world when you think about it? That this is our connection. We have a lot of organic matter in us. The soil does too, and so do plants. Life is life in some ways. Sometimes I think we try to make something that's simple very complicated, but I think life attracts life, and healthy living crosses all kinds of life forms. So this is just fun to know that you can get that good mood chemical boost legally and, you know, in a kind of a fun way outdoors. Now this is the one I think I mentioned in the intro class, the dopamine. This is a double-edged sword. Now just plucking that avocado off the Vons or Ralph shelf can give you a boost of dopamine. So whoa, you know, that's a little Twilight Zone-y. It used to be that being in nature and growing your own food and plucking it and feeling satisfied that I grew that, did it. But now, hopefully we're circling back now that we have more urban ag, but up until the last several years, it's been more, wow, just touching, feeling, and looking at produce can evoke this. So this is, and again, I apologize, these are all women. No intent there other than when I put that slide together, it was the Loma Linda Women's Conference. And I didn't want to put men and make it look like I was trying to do anything I wasn't. So I put only women. But this is universal, that when we're stressed, we need to take a break. And that's probably when you're going to raise your hand and think, no, I don't have time. I have too much to do. But that's precisely when you need to check out for 10 or 15 minutes and take that walk. And who's ever done that and come back and said, no, I shouldn't have done it? Anybody? Yeah, it's a good thing to do. Biophilia I mentioned before, it's still a hypothesis, but one of these days, you're going to get up here in front of a group of master gardeners, and I'm going to get up here in front of a group of master gardeners and say, this is no longer a hypothesis. This has been proven. Life needs life. And that's my belief in this. And Edward O. Wilson has many, many books out on, one is just the sort of migratory, psychological family nature of ants. So it's fascinating, but this is a great holiday gift. If you just Google Edward O. Wilson, and you can find a book on many levels of biophilia that just about anyone would enjoy. Some are heavier than others, but they're all feel-good books, but based on science. So getting back to the first question that I asked you, and underscoring that respondents of numerous surveys have indicated that they have really, really early memories of being in nature, and that they're very profound and very important to them. Obviously, being outdoors and exercising combines two really good things. And we have something in the Master Gardener San Bernardino program that I'll get to. But after this particular talk, Master Gardeners during break said, let's go for a walk, and they were walking around, and then they came up with this idea, the 100 Mile a Month Club. How cool is that? So get out and move 100 miles a month. Talk to your doctor first. I'm not a medical doctor, disclaimer, but this is something that's so cool. So this is how you would compute that could be done. And I do this. I got my 4.3 miles in today. I walked with my girlfriend this morning and then walked over to the post office. And so many nights I go home at 10 and get my 4 miles in. I feel better if I do that. It's just that important to me. And it's really made a profound difference in my life stress-wise. So that's how to do it. And for a 120-pound person, changing nothing else but that typical person will lose 10 to 15 pounds a year. Healing gardens. I want to make a distinction between the term therapeutic horticulture and horticulture therapy. Anybody want to make a guess, or maybe you know the difference now? Okay. Therapeutic horticulture is just the act of being in nature, all right? So we're all involved in therapeutic horticulture. Whenever you're outside, technically parking and walking to your class is therapeutic horticulture. Horticulture therapy is actually now in many states requiring a certificate, and they actually offer a bachelor's degree in it. So it would be partnering a horticulture therapist with a physical or occupational therapist, or maybe a psychologist or another medical professional, or maybe a whole team of these kinds of professionals working together. So that's a big distinction. And the Master Gardener Coordinator, and one of them in San Bernardino County, has a certificate from the Chicago Botanic Garden, who it was partly online and partly 10 days on site to earn a certificate in horticulture therapy. University of Kansas, Virginia, I still call it Virginia Polytech in Blacksburg. What's it called now, Virginia Tech? They were probably Virginia Lower there. She was probably the first one to actually push the department head to offer this kind of major. So this woman just sitting here could be involved in both. We don't know, right? We don't know. Maybe she was actually prescribed to sit and zen or meditate out for 10 minutes a day as therapy. But just looking in nature, we know she's involved in therapeutic horticulture. We don't know if there's more to it than that. Children's gardens, kids are every day involved in therapeutic horticulture as well. I knew I would do that sooner or later. So healing gardens are a growing trend. You see more and more in hospital settings, rehab centers, schools, parks, shopping centers. And horticulture therapy. If you want to learn more about that, there's, as most of these kinds of professions grow, there's a website, the American Horticulture Therapy Association.org, and they have a lot of papers and links on there. It's fun. It's fun reading. So physical rehab, eating disorders, anxiety, ADD, dementia, lots of these topics tied into horticulture therapy. This is Barb. She is the occupational therapist in a second career running the Hort Therapy program at the Chicago Botanic Garden. And I may have mentioned this before, but I just happened to be there serendipitously for another conference, and I emailed her because Donna, the Master Gardener Coordinator, had applied for this Hort Therapy class. And I thought, oh, maybe I can just put in a word for her. And she said, come on over. So I went over the next morning. She is a delightful woman. She took me on a tour, and I was so excited. I was excited for everybody that's in that area that she was going to teach. So this is the Chicago Botanic Garden. If you notice that there's pulleys, there's different things so you can pull hanging plants up and down to water them. They have very strategically developed system of sidewalks, of raised beds, and different kinds of surfaces to work with physical therapists and occupational therapists. And I love this term. Barb calls it the enabling garden. That's cool. So here's all the tricks of the trade. So anytime you're in Chicago, think about going to the Chicago Botanic Garden, and you'll see sort of in the back 40, be sure and find it. It's not just going to scream at you. You have to look for it, but ask to see the enabling garden. This is out in Palm Springs, just about a mile from our home out there. And this is actually, I could call it an enabling garden as well. It's got an exercise area. It's got a pollinator portion of it. It was funded by the Desert Hospital Foundation and some other health organizations out there. So there's a lot of these around that certainly are enjoyed with a therapeutic horticulture perspective, if not the hort therapy. This is Loma Linda University East Campus. This is a wonderful example where each of the rooms has a walkout and a patio. And the Master Gardeners one year helped to put together colorful baskets for the patients. And it's just, it opens out. That's very, very important part of the recovery there. And he's retired now, Michael Jackson, the former CEO there, is a Master Gardener. So again, therapeutic horticulture in contrast, it's a process of being out in nature. So let's talk a little bit about what grabs us about our own space, whether you want to call it a meditation garden or a Zen garden, or a little of both, or your man or woman cave, however you relate to it. This is becoming very, very popular as the cities become more intense, as we have more of the urban heat island effects. People want their space, and it doesn't have to be in the spare bedroom anymore. It can be outdoors, especially in California, right? Not back in Minnesota, but here, well, part of the year you could there. So the key elements that research has found that most people want in their serene place is quiet. They want what? Whatever they refer to as their own sanctuary, that's what they want. They want it to be sensory. Most people want comfortable seating. Some people that could mean on dichondra, right? A yoga mat. It doesn't have to be a typical chair. So this is left in the eyes of the beholder rather than what we may view as the perfect chair, ergodynamically correct or something. And this is interesting. Most people wanted low maintenance plants, but about 18% said it either didn't matter or they wanted high maintenance. And then clicking later on, these were the people that had gardeners hired to take care of it. Because that makes sense. That's stressful. If you're sitting there and the grass is this tall and you're supposed to be mowing it, maybe that's just me, but that wouldn't push my serenity button very far, right? So these aren't from California, I want to say that right now, but these were in a study. And I'm just curious, we have 4 or 5 minutes, and I'd like your reaction to what grabs you or not about these. And then I'll tell you what research says about that. Anybody? Yes?
Top left picture, the chair and the rest facing together,
Okay. Is that a good thing?
so that we can actually have conversation with people.
Okay, excellent. So chairs facing together, yes? Intimate space. This one? Uh-huh, okay. Intimate, and how would you define intimate to you? Uh-huh. Okay. All right. There was a hand. Yes. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I like the top right because there's just no place for anybody else to interfere.
This one.
Truly, I mean, I love being out where there's nobody around and the water in the background
Yeah.
is just an added plus because that has a whole nother level of creatures that'll be
Yeah.
out there.
Fun.
That's
Fun.
my idea with that one.
Can everybody hear that? Yeah. Okay. And then you, and then you. Yeah.
The bottom left looks like it's comfortable. It looks like it would be surrounded by smells, pollinators, the sound of birds and bees.
Uh-huh.
It just looks very, very relaxing.
Okay. And this is sort of intrinsic to all of them, I think, but they put that in there, and a lot of people said, no, that's a part of it. They wanted to sort of figure out who was actually paying attention, so you could have more than one choice. So this was the most popular one that they chose, actually, because the other 3, it was more distributed, but they wanted the butterfly and something else. So, yes.
I was attracted to the lower left too, but my mind just went straight to it's a happy place.
It's a happy place.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wasn't thinking smells or
It just looks happy.
tactile, just happy.
Okay, I like that. Okay. Any of these, first of all, any other comments on those before I ask another question about it? Yes. Okay.
Give birth today, I mean,
Oh, yay! Yay!
If there's something about looking out into the garden and seeing nature, whether it be the squirrels eating stuff you don't want them to eat, but butterflies, I happen to be with birds interesting, or the birds and hummingbirds, and so I think that's maybe why. The other ones could be
Uh-huh. Well, no, I understand it. There's flora and then there's fauna. Yeah, yeah. A couple more people, yes.
especially that little seating area, I don't really like that seating area
Okay,
I'd rather probably just put a spot on
okay,
ground, but of course you have concrete there.
yeah.
I think that kind of reminds me, like when you walk around Disneyland, the difference between Disneyland
Uh-huh.
and Magic Mountain.
Oh,
Disneyland incorporates little areas that are actually little niches.
Yes.
They're actually quiet.
Yes.
Of course, some of them turned into smoking areas.
oh,
That was all.
oh,
There's like, they're really into their landscaping
Uh-huh.
at Disneyland.
yeah,
And it just adds to that
Yeah.
happiest place on earth.
the happiest place on earth.
You know, it's
Yeah.
not all concrete.
Yeah.
They really seem to care
Yeah,
about there being plants.
yeah, interesting.
Disneyland is taking out all that area, all that horticulture in Bugland area, and they're changing that into a marble.
Yeah, but that's Melbourne, I'll talk to Disney.
Oh,
It's the same thing, it's the same company. it's
Yeah,
the
I know.
same
right,
thing,
different part, yeah.
but-
And then, how many of you been to Rogers Garden Center in Orange County? They have the little vignettes too, and a lot of people relate that. A couple of the master gardeners said, yeah, have you been to Rogers? Because you can go in the little vignettes and get a different personality. Yes? Oh. Mm. Yes.
A lot of land
Uh-huh.
in the United States, and so they kind of niche out just wee bits of
Uh-huh.
patio and
Uh-huh.
the weather, so you're going to take advantage of it anyway. And so that's what I think the will reflect.
Okay, excellent. So the next thing the researchers did was to compile those that favored one of these three and or the butterfly with occupations. This was interesting. There was a statistically significant difference between those that were in mathematician and engineering fields versus social science. Very clear. So which one, and one of them was sort of, divided into which one would you think the mathematicians and the engineers would prefer? Yeah. Yep. The top left. Yeah. Yeah, it's boom, boom, boom. Yeah. So, and the social scientists tended to prefer this. And this was pretty well split. This was very heavily favored by those identifying as females. All right? I'll just say you check off what and this was, I don't know whether it's more the pink, whatever, but anyway, I just think it was interesting. And then almost everybody liked the concept of having the birds and the bees as long as they didn't get stung by them, right? Anyway, so that's, these are now referred to as like Zen gardens, you might hear that, or MySpace, remember before? When MySpace was actually on the computer, now there's a pocket of MySpace, and that's kind of what it is. And hopefully you leave your, bless you, hopefully you leave your phone and your electronics out of there, right? Yeah. I mean, I need to tell myself that, but okay. Other research findings, watch out if you go to the mall because you'll probably spend more money. All things considered, people spend about 25% more on average at a mall with plants. And whether, I'd love to read more about that study, I saw it cross-referenced, but I don't know whether it's because you linger longer or whether something about the plants just creates this image of you having more money than you really do, or more frivolous money, I don't know, yes.
Okay, so I don't know about plants, but I do know that the reason malls are installing more cushions and more seating areas is because it shows that you spend 20 to 40%
Yeah.
more money in a place that you're happy.
Uh-huh.
So if you leave whatever place you had to come to, you had to buy shoes, and you see this nice little seating area, well, you're gonna sit there and you're gonna be like, oh wow, I do like it
Yeah.
here. And then you're gonna look around and be like, actually, I also love Build-A-Bear.
Yeah,
And
there you
you're
go.
more likely to go into the next store as opposed to beelining to your place and then getting out because it's not hospitable.
Yeah.
So like to me, yeah, I'm much more likely to sit somewhere
Yeah.
with a whole bunch of plants.
Interesting. All right. The other really interesting finding is a lot of computer labs, faster reflexes, all these things. Again, a lot of studies that are in high-end journals that are peer-reviewed. Recent developments, getting a little bit back to, what we call where the rubber hits the road and away from the studies, is, as you know, interest in backyard community and school gardens has heightened the past 8 to 10 years. The Smithsonian recreated the Victory Garden, and that's wonderful to see. They've got pamphlets, and then the White House Gardens, the Get Moving theme, when Michelle Obama used that as sort of her, her theme was Get Moving. So that, when I put this slide together, this was huge, the Get Moving theme. And that sort of brought people together across the political line, too. It was just get out there and get moving, something that you can bring people together and not get into the politics. So the National Garden Association keeps some really good facts and figures. And actually, this was 53 million households by the end of 2016. So I keep that slide in there just because it's impactful, because a lot of these figures are going to be more conservative. This one, they blasted right past the projection. That's a lot of households, isn't it? So school and community gardens. In California, more and more of these gardens are tied directly to standards by which math, health, language arts, social sciences, as well as just PE, are tied to events and activities in a garden. How many of you are either educators or past educators working with children? There's usually quite a few. Okay. There you go. Okay. So I do know, and this discussion comes up, that it can be very, very difficult to get these gardens started. It's political. You have to have a lot of buy-in by administration. So it's not just the parents and the kids wagging their hands saying, let's do it. So that's a fact. I know that study I showed you that picture of, if it weren't a magnet school, we would have had a much harder time getting in. But I wanted to talk a little bit about what I consider the profound implications of these school gardens. One thing that just shouts out is health. Just being out there and growing food, and then hopefully these kids will go home and want to replicate that and share. And obviously, we all know that between ages of 2 and about 5, that's a great age to plant seeds. I mean that metaphorically and literally, okay? So there's a lot of curriculum. There's so much, and I'm just going to do a quick touch and go so we can get into share time and break. But all these websites are in this presentation, and Dave or Rosa, one, will be posting this. So there's a lot of farm-to-school programs in California where they bring Farmer John or Farmer Joan to the school. Riverside has putting the wow in school lunches, and it's just fun. We didn't have school lunches like that. My grade school, we went home and ate, and then in junior high, we ate at school, but there was nothing. Anybody have a lunch like that? Yeah. Plastic pizza, yeah. A lot of big fat rolls and butter, white rolls and butter. So, in Riverside Unified, about 60% of students are eligible for free or reduced cost meals. In City of San Bernardino, it's 84%. And this program's going crazy there, going nuts. A similar program, not the Riverside Unified. So the Riverside Farm to School program overview, now there's about 36 schools as of the beginning of the fall school year. So they have everything from farm fresh salad bars, and they consider local within 30-mile radius. That's important, too, to look at what that means. Out in the desert where I live, it's 100-mile radius. And like, local? I don't know about that. Not to a Midwestern girl. That's not very local. So salad bars, they have these meals delivered twice a week, the food. The students actually visit the farms. The farmers market in Santa Monica. This is just a fun one, too. Actually, this is going on 13 years now. Their moniker is Home of the Cool Lunch. Engaging students, obviously, at all levels that you can. I do know, as far as San Bernardino Unified, we were very, very frustrated because when we were working those kids at the garden, the school, the parents, administrators were all for growing the food. And then we found out they weren't allowed to eat it. So don't even get me going on the politics, but they ended up having to get the PTA involved, having the PTA officially harvest it, and then around the back door bring it back to the kids after school hours. Now, things have changed, but you can just, hopefully the wheels are in motion, thinking of bureaucracy at its worst. Things are changing, and so we're not there anymore. But it was disheartening. I couldn't believe it till I made a few phone calls and found out this was true. And it was all about food safety and laws. So I'm not saying the intention wasn't good, but we've got to bridge these gaps. We really have to bridge these gaps. So I wish I had him for a teacher. It looks like fun. And then I have to put in our headquarters. You see Davis. Of course, Davis would have something like this, right? The joke is it takes 5 professors in Davis to change a light bulb, but because they all come at it from different angles. But they have a really cool Joint Unified School District seasonal produce to schools program. This is what they serve in the Davis school system. Now, granted, a lot of kids would rather have pizza or a hamburger. Think of your kids or grandkids that are between 6 years old and 10 or 11. I don't know how many would choose that. Maybe more. I think my daughter's son, my grandson who's 1.5, he's vegan. She hasn't eaten all kinds of stuff, although we snuck him a little ketchup the other day. He would like that. Yes. No. Uh-huh.
And they're not quite this fancy. I say that. Not even a little.
Yeah.
But one of my kids came home and was like, Mom, how come we never have dates in the house?
Oh.
First of all, how do you know what a date is?
Wow.
And second of all, why is that suddenly so important to you? And it's because they actually let the salad bar stuff that they're doing now, the kids can go back for as much food from that
Uh-huh.
as they can eat during lunch.
Yeah.
Right, like when we were in school, if you wanted more food, you came back with more quarters and you bought whatever it was.
Cool.
But like as long as it's in that salad bar section, they can leave with a bucket
Yeah.
of it.
Cool.
Completely fine. No, they were just little things. They were in the salad bar section. I guess some local farmer had
Yes.
extra dates and donated them.
Yeah.
So my kid saw somebody else take one who knew what it was, and she was like, oh, well, I guess everybody else is eating it, so I'll eat them.
Yeah.
But like if she hadn't seen some other kid eat it, I would
Yeah.
never have given it to her.
Yeah.
So she would never eat it. But like,
Interesting.
if you don't show them those things, oh,
Yeah.
they're gonna eat it, I would never give it
Yeah.
to them. If my kids saw the kid next to them eating
Yeah.
it, it would be much more open.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting point. So just some ideas, and I'm sure these are the model lunches. They're going to pick the best of the best, maybe even just for the picture. I don't know. But if this is every day, that's pretty fancy. I will just, truth comes out. I heard on the news about 6 months ago that LA Unified was rethinking this in high school because they were saying that the basketball and soccer and football players, and men and women, were starving. And so does that mean that they just didn't like it, so we're eating as much? I mean, some of this is pretty caloric. But anyway, all stories told, they don't necessarily love this. Yes?
In high school, they start bringing in vendors, basically, they're serving Pizza Hut, they're serving Taco Bell, serving Miguel's. That's where.
Is that pretty common at high schools now? I thought they were getting back to more healthy meals. No? No? Yes. Yeah. Yes.
It's not that they won't eat it, but I have kids who don't know what strawberries taste like.
I see.
They don't even know what a
So it's
blueberry is.
unfamiliarity.
So you can take those two.
Yeah.
We actually at quinoa, and I
Yeah.
tried them with clearly
Uh-huh.
money,
Uh-huh.
get them to try it.
Uh-huh.
And that was they were like, oh, I didn't know.
Mhm.
And again, it falls on the fact that they won't eat it.
Yep.
They eat things familiar, like
Mhm.
things that are packaged, like
Mhm.
the burritos or
Mhm.
the french fries or the pizza. They know what those are.
Mhm.
Or the fruit cup that comes out of the
Yeah.
tin.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
on there. But most of the time, they don't, or they won't even eat a whole apple.
Yeah.
Someone needs to cut it, and
Yeah.
then they'll eat it.
So another star for school gardens then, where they're actually planting the seeds, watching them germinate, and then they grew that strawberry like that little boy. Yeah, yes.
You know, there's something to be said on that too. I grew up with, we had, there were 150-foot rows in our garden, and we could be playing, it was a farm, 78 acres. We get hungry, we go out to the garden and pick strawberries or
Yeah.
string beans and just munch on them, or rhubarb. But a strawberry from a grocery store tastes like crap compared to one you go out
Yes.
and pick. And if they have that bad taste
Yeah.
because their mom brought home one from the store, that's
Yeah.
got to turn them off and they're not going to try it again.
And
that's
tomatoes?
too bad. Oh, I know. It's
Yeah.
like, I didn't
Yeah.
buy them from the store.
Yeah. Yes, you had a comment?
I was gonna say, there's a lot of sensitivity that needs to be made aware of. I used to work in the Riverside Education Department, and within our county, there is so much underserved food deserts, and we are one of the poorest counties in California. And the kids don't wanna participate in the school food program because they feel like they're being singled out, or the parent or their caregiver, the responsible party, won't sign them up for it because they're constantly moving one month to another month because they can't make and afford the monthly rent. So they're never staying in the same school district, and that's a challenge to try to get these kids to eat when they're constantly,
Yeah.
there's so many different factors against them.
Yeah, good, excellent point. Excellent point, all of them. So more, there's the blood oranges, navel oranges, kiwis, Mediterranean pasta. And I love that picture. You know, people that are enjoying work, right? So that's their team, yeah.
Yeah, because it would take more effort to fix fresh.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Vegetables and make it
Yeah.
sellable and edible.
It's very labor intensive, sure. So as far as how these school gardens fit into statewide standards, the subjects linked and the percent of each garden activity linking those is here. And obviously science, if you just look at science, is a large hodgepodge of social, physical science. You're going to see that's the biggest. But then health and nutrition, community service, math. There's pizza gardens where they do fractions. And then there's, I've seen some Redlands. One of our master gardeners had a school in every garden in the Redlands School District. And she was just, we needed 10 clones of Emily. And then we lost her to the East Coast. But she was a bumblebee. She started all these gardens and got the schools all involved. And one had a history line garden, which was really cool. So all these creative ideas, the sky is the limit on where to go. So I think that the proof's in the pudding here. Reported evidence documenting the effectiveness. 92% of those that had gardens received positive responses overall. 80% received positive responses from administrators, and that's pretty good. It's really, really hard when administrators are teaching to the test. Am I right on that? Yeah. Where by the second week of May, you better be on page 92, paragraph 2 of your history book, or something's wrong, whether the class is ahead of you or behind you. Yes. Family members also, and this was interesting. The locations, virtually all of them said they were going to continue it. So a few examples about the academics that are linked. And I want to be very careful and not suggest that I know why these research results occurred. If it were more in my area, I'd go back and look at every study and figure it out, but it's not, and so I haven't taken the time. But this is research-based data that's available if you wanted to go back and seek out that information. And I have, on a couple pieces of paper, all the references for all of these. So one study looked at 40 schools in 12 states, and on standardized tests, based on including outdoor gardening curriculum, the students outperformed the control group, the same school without the garden on standardized tests. Now again, did they fudge? And did they teach to the teach in the garden, teach to the class in the garden? I don't know, but I'm assuming because of the level of journals these were in that this wasn't fabricated. Science and math. Students tend to score higher on science and math achievement tests when they're involved in gardening exercise. There's a lot of, I just picked out a few studies that to me seem to make the most sense. So this goes on and on, lots of data. Food system curriculum improves achievement in related areas. higher grades, improvement in overall eco-literacy and health scores. So the data are, I think, there. Now this makes fundamentally a lot of sense. Evidence indicates that good eating habits established before 6th grade are important. I'd say even before 3rd or 4th grade. But we all remember that age in our own life, that you do get in a rut by that age of what you like or what you're used to eating. We have a huge childhood obesity problem in Riverside and San Bernardino counties, with over 50 to 58%, depending on the district, children being overweight and up to a third being obese. So also less than a quarter of them eat 5 servings of fruit or vegetables a day. This is nationwide. School gardens, there's a bevy of information on those as far as cooperation, again, the playing well together, the shared learning experience, and some of that's more esoteric and more difficult, I think, to grasp. But just more studies, the same kind of thing. So a summary of the school garden studies are that the reason we looked at 1st graders, my husband's a psychologist. He's a psychology professor, so he had some grad students. Some of our master gardeners, one of them was a professor at Fullerton, Cal State Fullerton, in sociology. So we got a lot of people together to look at 1st graders. That's why we did that study. Evidence is there, and the way I look at it is what would be negative about it, right? As long as you're tying learning to a school garden, is there anything averse on the other side of the coin? And I'm not suggesting that every single school jump at this, because you've got to get buy-in for this to work. And educators all the time tell me, you make it sound real simple, and it just doesn't work that way. So I wanted to end up with some curriculum that colleagues of mine in a whole different area in food and nutrition sciences have put together for pre-K up through high school. And this is all conforming to the California standards. So one bit of curriculum is called Eating Healthy from Farm to Fork. And this is the kindergarten to 3rd grade. And so for each kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, they have bullets and they tell you what the learning objectives are, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, a kindergartner, you just want to familiarize themselves with what a fruit may look like. Here's a tomato, here's an apple, here's what you can grow in your backyard. Do any of you have anything growing in your backyard? This is a great site, healthyschoolenvironment.org. There's all kinds of free PowerPoints. They're excellent. And as a master gardener, feel free to use these to credit that site, but then put your own, as I say, your own rubber stamp to personalize them. Just give credit to these sites, but that's what they're for. And put the master, talk to Rosa and make sure that these are housed so other people have access, put the logo, that kind of thing. So there's that. The California School Garden Network resources. This is csgn.org, the Let's Get Growing video and resources. This 100-page ebook, Gardening for Learning. Anybody have that? It's excellent. Just so much out there. An excellent website. Free and downloadable. So it talks about everything from planning the garden, who to bring to the table, who is probably going to have what questions, all these things, very detailed. So kidsgardening.org. This registry needs to be updated. It's one of those things where they had funding for a while and then it fell out, and so it hasn't been kept up. So I know it's deficient as far as what gardens are included. Community gardening. School gardens are part of community garden. We tend to speak of them as another entity just because that further defines our audience. Lots of raised beds. If you look at the history of community gardening, before it was actually in the schools, we were an agrarian society. We didn't need school gardens. We came from a garden at home. So think back to the war commissions, World War I, World War II, where now we have Grow a Row for the Hungry. we grew a lot of food for our troops. We meaning our relatives that have passed on mostly. So it was a big, big deal. And fun posters. I love to look at these. When I was at the Smithsonian, they were offering one of their hallways to house these posters. So the United States School Garden Army, Victory Garden, our food is fighting. Anyway, we're circling back to some of these same concepts now. So the benefits of inner city gardens are very similar to what we've been talking about, but more from a social perspective, where we do have a social inequality. When you look at any remote sensing study, I just saw one that looked at all of LA, and there's an inequity with green spaces and levels of poverty. In other words, when you're growing up and you're in subsidized housing, it's harder to be close to a park or a garden. And so some of these things, maybe rooftop gardens, something can, I think, prevail that brings health and oxygen and the benefits, the cooling of the environment, more to everybody. So I have some pictures, a lot of research on engaging youth, keeping them busy. You've all seen those kind of data, but in community gardening activities, in school gardens, and also to increase the value of the city and the properties around them. Some of the other gardens are entrepreneurial job training gardens. And then yard sharing therapy garden, seed sharing demonstration gardens, food pantries. These are all examples of gardens. Yes?
So when you mentioned about building jobs in the community, for instance, our school district has worked, is going to work with local wineries from teaching the kids how to grow grapes, not wine, but viticulture, starting in elementary. Then we're going up to middle schools, to the high schools, and then they're going to actually be able, so the kids who are going to have that opportunity to work through and have skill that they may not have had, had the wineries have not come to the district and asked.
Yeah.
They've done.
That's great.
There's 2 other wineries in the state, Northern California, that viticulture opportunities.
And which school is it?
I work in Val Verde School District, so my school, May Branch, is working with one of them as well. So,
Okay.
so they're expecting the next Orange Vista is the first high school that's brand new off of the belief that will start it.
Okay. Did everybody catch that? There's a lot of these activities going on, and I'm sure that you would feel free to share your experience and post it and let people grow and have access to that, right? And I don't have my glasses on. Patty?
Oh,
Kelly?
I'm Kelly.
Oh, Kelly, okay. Thank you for sharing. Somebody else had their hand up? Yeah.
Talking about when my cousin's husband had joined the school time. It wasn't a university. It was a very, high school here. And they grew grapes, but they also made wine with it. They called it shula wine, school wine, and they actually sold it.
Wow.
So it's not like a weird behavior. That's how we get it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Interesting. Well, drinking and driving is almost non-existent. I know my brothers in Sweden, they don't do that there, so maybe. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Wow. So just to finish up here, a lot of challenges. So obviously, you as horticulturist, and not being on necessarily, maybe you are, if you're a mayor on the city council, anybody have those? The one time I say that, somebody will say, excuse me, I'm the mayor of Harupa or something, but if you are, more power to you. But these things do happen, so I always encourage our educators, you, to keep your eye on the ball as far as being horticulturist. And you can help. And on our website, there's a link to the Fresno County Master Gardeners who have done a wonderful job. There's about a 50-page in and out, how to work with communities and how to work with school districts to get gardens going. And follow that, but one of the take-home messages is to get the right people around the table and stick to the horticulture. Don't knock on the, don't get too politically active and use your time just to be frustrated. It takes people to do that, but we need you as helping to get the seeds in the ground and get the kids motivated after it's been approved, okay? Unless you happen to be in a position where you do have political power. Otherwise, make sure that's at the outset, but make sure there's somebody appropriate to do that. But it not necessarily is going to be a master gardener. So this is great. Community Gardens, Lessons Learned from California Healthy Cities and Communities. This was published in American Journal of Public Health. Here's some cities. Lots of lessons learned, most having to do with the right people, right place, just like right plant, right place, getting buy-in. And here's a big one. Who's going to maintain the school gardens if you don't have a year-round school? All these questions. It's fun to get all these things going. It's fun to have the million tree planting. Who's going to take care of everything? So anyway. So here's the key elements for success. Local leadership and staffing, volunteers and community partners, skill building opportunities. Some out-of-state examples, Take Back Detroit, big project. Detroit went bankrupt, San Bernardino did later, but there's a lot of vacant land. And they took back I'll come back to that, they took back a lot of the vacant land. This is in Pennsylvania, intergenerational gardens. So master gardeners were involved here. Penn State, Cumberland County, anybody lived in Cumberland County? I had a master gardener once from there that was involved in this. And so they have a new garden project, birds and butterfly intergenerational sensory gardens. Fun. So children and seniors together, it's a great idea. So that's an example. Sensory gardens are huge. Michigan Urban Farming Initiative, Taking Back Detroit. 501c3 nonprofit seeks to engage members of the Michigan community in sustainable ag, community gardening, important. This was done so well, the mission, the vision, it was so dialed in. It's just textbook example of how to move from point A to B civically with all ages, all demographics involved. So the Michigan Urban Farming Initiative, from famine to food. Obvious it's going to start with those that it most matters to. So starting in the community itself with those living and wanting to improve the community. So there was just a write-up in, of all places, the Southwest magazine on this. It's come a long way. These pictures are from about 3 years ago. So the Greening of Detroit, they have a mission statement. Inspiring sustainable growth of a healthy urban community through trees, green spaces, food, education, training, and job opportunities. We aspire to provide a greener tomorrow for our Detroit. They were able to bring in hundreds of thousands of grant dollars for this, which was really important. Yeah, pretty impressive, huh? Lafayette Greens. Lots of inner city downtown gardens. Yoga, bring your yoga mat and we'll harvest your tomatoes afterwards. So Lafayette Gardens grows organic fruits, vegetables, herbs, and flowers. All produce stays in the community. There it is downtown, or it goes to the shelters. And that's my presentation. And again, this will be uploaded. And this is just the tip of the iceberg as far as opportunities out there in this area. So